Welcome to True Crime Sleep Stories. It's time to relax, get comfortable, and let me lull you to sleep with a truly terrifying tale of murder and mayhem. Tonight's bedtime story is that of Elizabeth Short, also known as the Black Dahlia. Elizabeth Short was an American woman found murdered in the Leimert Park neighborhood of Los Angeles, California on January 15, 1947. Her case became highly publicized owing to the gruesome nature of the crime, which included the mutilation of her corpse, which was bisected at the waist. A native of Boston, Short spent her early life in New England and Florida before relocating to California, where her father lived. It's commonly held that she was an aspiring actress, although she had no known acting credits or jobs during her time in Los Angeles. She would acquire the nickname of the Black Dahlia posthumously, as newspapers of the period often nicknamed particularly lurid crimes. The term may have originated from a film noir murder mystery, The Blue Dahlia. After the discovery of her body, the Los Angeles Police Department began an extensive investigation that produced over 150 suspects, but yielded no arrests. Short's unsolved murder and the details surrounding it have had a lasting cultural intrigue, generating various theories and public speculation. Her life and death have been the basis of numerous books and films, and her murder is frequently cited as one of the most famous unsolved murders in U.S. history, as well as one of the oldest unsolved cases in Los Angeles County. It has likewise been credited by historians as one of the first major crimes in post-war America to capture national attention. Prior to her murder on January 9, 1947, Short returned to her home in Los Angeles after a brief trip to San Diego with Robert Red Manley, a 25-year-old married salesman that she had been dating. Manley stated that he dropped Short off at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles and that Short was to meet her sister, who was arriving from Boston that afternoon. By some accounts, staff of the Biltmore recalled having seen Short using the lobby telephone. Shortly after, she was allegedly seen by patrons of the Crown Grill Cocktail Lounge at 754 South Olive Street, approximately 3/8 of a mile away from the Biltmore. On the morning of January 15, 1947, Short's naked body, severed in two pieces, was found in a vacant lot on the west side of South Norton Avenue, midway between Coliseum Street and West 39th Street in the neighborhood of Leimert Park. At the time, Leimert Park was largely undeveloped. Short's severely mutilated body was completely severed at the waist and drained of blood, leaving her skin a pallid white. Medical examiners determined that she had been dead for around 10 hours prior to the discovery, leaving her time of death either sometime during the evening of January 14th or the early morning hours of January 15th. The body had apparently been washed by the killer. Short's face had been slashed from the corners of her mouth to her ears, creating an effect known as the Glasgow smile. She had several cuts on her thigh and breasts where entire portions of flesh had been sliced away. The lower half of her body was positioned a foot away from the upper, and her intestines had been tucked neatly beneath her buttocks. The corpse had been posed with her hands over her head, her elbows bent at right angles, and her legs spread apart. Los Angeles Herald-Express reporter Aggie Underwood was among the first to arrive and took several photos of the corpse and the crime scene. Near the body, detectives located a heel print on the ground amid the tire tracks, and a cement sack containing watery blood was also found nearby. An autopsy of Short's body was performed on January 16, 1947 by Frederick Newbar, the Los Angeles County coroner, Newbar's autopsy report stated that Short was 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighed 115 pounds. She had light blue eyes, brown hair, and badly decayed teeth. There were ligature marks on her ankles, wrists, and neck, and an irregular laceration with superficial tissue loss on her right breast. Newbar also noted superficial lacerations on the right forearm, left upper arm, and the lower left side of the chest. The body had been cut completely in half by a technique taught in the 1930s called a hemicorporectomy. The lower half of her body had been removed by transecting the lumbar spine between the second and third lumbar vertebrae, thus severing the intestine at the duodenum. Newbar's report noted very little ecchymosis, or bruising, along the incision line, suggesting it had been performed after death. Another gaping laceration, measuring over 4 inches long, ran longitudinally from the umbilicus to the suprapubic region. The lacerations on each side of the face, which extended from the corners of the lips, were measured at 3 inches on the right side of the face and 2.5 inches on the left. The skull was not fractured, but there was bruising noted at the front and the right side of her scalp, with a small amount of bleeding in the subarachnoid space on the right side, consistent with blows to the head. The cause of death was determined to be hemorrhaging from the lacerations to her face and the shock from the blows to the head and the face. Samples were taken from her body, testing for the presence of sperm, but the results came back negative. Short was identified after her fingerprints were sent to the Federal Bureau of Investigations. Her fingerprints were on file from her 1943 arrest. Immediately following Short's identification, reporters from the Los Angeles Examiner contacted her mother, Phoebe Short, in Boston, and told her that her daughter had won a beauty contest. It was only after prying as much personal information as they could from Phoebe that the reporters revealed that her daughter had actually been murdered. The Examiner also offered to pay Phoebe's airfare and accommodations if she would travel to Los Angeles to help them with the police investigation. That was yet another ploy, since the newspaper kept her away from the police and other reporters to protect its scoop. The Examiner and another Hearst newspaper, the Herald Express, later sensationalized the case, with one Examiner article describing the black tailored suit Short was last seen wearing as a tight skirt and a sheer blouse. The media nicknamed her the Black Dahlia and described her as an adventuress who prowled Hollywood Boulevard. Additional newspaper reports, such as one published in the Los Angeles Times on January 17th, deemed the murder a sex fiend slaying. The notoriety of Short's murder has spurred a large number of confessions over the years, most of which have been deemed false. During the initial investigation into her murder, police received a total of 60 confessions, most made by men. Since that time, over 500 people have confessed to the crime, some of whom had not even been born at the time of her death. Sergeant John St. John, a detective who worked the case until his retirement, stated,
"It's amazing how many people offer up a relative as the killer."
Several crime authors, as well as police detective Peter Merylo, have suspected a link between the Short murder and the Cleveland torso murders, which took place in Cleveland, Ohio between 1934 and 1938. As part of their investigation into other murders that took place before and after the Short killing, the original LAPD investigators studied the torso murders in 1947, but later discounted any connection between the two cases. Numerous details regarding Short's personal life and death have been points of public dispute. The eager involvement of both the public and the press in solving her murder have been credited as factors that have complicated the investigation significantly, resulting in a complex, sometimes inconsistent narrative of events. A number of people, none of whom knew Short, contacted police and the newspapers and claimed to have seen her during her so-called missing week, between her January 9th disappearance and the discovery of her body on January 15th. Police and DA investigators ruled out each alleged sighting. In some cases, those interviewed were identifying other women whom they had mistaken for Short. Short's whereabouts in the days leading up to her murder and the discovery of her body are unknown. According to newspaper reports shortly after the murder, Short received the nickname Black Dahlia from staff and patrons at a Long Beach drugstore in mid-1946 as wordplay on the film The Blue Dahlia from 1946. Other popularly circulated rumors claim that the media crafted the name because Short adorned her jet black hair with dahlias. According to the FBI official website, she received the first part of the nickname from the press for her rumored penchant for sheer black clothing. Although some of her acquaintances and several other journalists described Short as a prostitute or call girl during her time in Los Angeles, according to Harnish, the contemporaneous grand jury proved that there was no existing evidence that she was ever a sex worker. Short is interned at the Mountain View Cemetery in Oakland, California. After her younger sister, Elnora, had grown up and married, their mother, Phoebe, moved to Oakland to be near her daughter's grave. She finally returned to the East Coast in the 1970s, where she lived into her 90s and died in 1992. On February 2, 1947, just 2 weeks after Short's murder, Republican State Assemblyman C. Don Field was prompted by the case to introduce a bill calling for the formation of a sex offender registry. The state of California would become the first U.S. state to make the registration of sex offenders mandatory. Short's murder has been described as one of the most brutal and culturally enduring crimes in American history. Time magazine listed it as one of the most infamous cases in the world. Short's life and death have been the basis of numerous books, television shows, and films, both fictionalized and nonfiction. Thank you for listening to this episode of True Crime Sleep Stories. Until next time, good night, sleep tight, and don't let the monsters bite.